conversation outside of you is going to get picked up. So we're like,
Okay, so everyone, welcome to the Marshfield Democratic Town Committee. This is our first candidate meet and greet. We have some exciting candidates for you today. We're hoping to keep it to 30 to 35 minutes. There we go. And that's me echoing. We're hoping to keep it to 30 to 45 minutes. The two women we have are, this is early in your stump speeches, so we are definitely looking for feedback. So do not leave this room until you've had a chance to talk to the candidates. The basic rule is for any candidate forum, the first one to show up gets to go first. Stacy was first and Becky's going to go second. Just a couple things before we get started. We have some pastries from Pastries. So please check them out. I want to thank them for providing food. If you are in the room, you can see on the left, on the right-hand side of me is the map of Marshfield. Everyone needs to know that we have been redistricted. So we now have a 2A precinct, which is brand new to us. It is divided between Josh Cutler, who is presently representing the 6th Plymouth, and Patrick Kearney, who is presently representing the 4th Plymouth. Okay? Below the map, and we'll take pictures of this for everyone, we have our town divided into neighborhoods. Democratic Town Committee is going to be doing door knocking, postcards, and calls to our neighborhoods to make sure that our Democratic voters show up. Marshfield has a huge problem in the fact that the Republicans consistently win our town, even though there's more Democrats in this town than there are Republicans. The problem we have is our Democratic voters don't show up. So it's very important for our town committee to be reminding our base to show up. Because if Becky is to win her district and if Stacy's to win the actual governor's council, we need Marshfield to show up. Okay, when Marshfield show up, Democrats win. The way we're doing this is we have created something called the GCA process, which is a voter outreach program. And the theme of the GCA process is do good often. And we are doing this by hosting 6 times a year, a civic engagement event. In October, we hosted our first one, which was a food drive for the food pantry, which is right behind us. We filled 12 carriages of food, which was huge.
Wow.
We did it on Halloween, and we had tons of activity. If we weren't collecting food, we were handing out stickers to kids. Then we finished the year on December 30th with a veterans coat drive that went insane. We collected 500 coats in 4 hours. So many that our Veterans Affairs group couldn't use them all. So they had to send them down to Springfield for the homeless shelter in Springfield, and we sent them down to the Joint Air Force Base on Cape Cod. So it was a huge success. We're going to continue this success. We just finished a survey. I'm going to tell you what our winners are after our candidates. But what we're looking for people to do is, the problem with Democrats is, what do you say to people when you knock on their door? We're not Republicans. We don't react to slogans. We want to know substance. We need to be talking about candidates. So you can't just knock on your neighbor's door and yell, Hunter Biden's laptop. Come follow me. I'm going to yell Hunter Biden's laptop to a few more people and we'll get a group together. No, that doesn't work for Democrats. For Democrats, you have to have candidates, you have to have issues. So what we're doing with these civic engagement events is we're reaching out to our neighbors and we're saying, hey, Marshfield Democratic Town Committee is hosting a coat drive for veterans. Marshfield Democratic Town Committee is doing a blood drive for our town. Marshfield Democratic Town Committee is doing a food drive for our food pantry. So when we go to our Democratic neighbors' doors, we're inviting them to get involved with our community. Now, you can do this outreach however you want. You can do it by postcarding your neighbor. Send them an invite. You can do it by calling them up and inviting them. You can text it, you can email it, whatever you want. We will provide you with the invitation, and all you have to do is reach out. Now, we would love it if these people that we reach out to join us at our town committee volunteer opportunity. But that's not the point. The point is, 50 of your neighbors will know that the Marshfield Democratic Town Committee exists. 50 of your neighbors will be reminded 4 times a year that their obligation is to vote and vote for Democrats. So by the time we get to the election, it won't be the first time we've talked to our neighbors. It will be the 6th or 7th time that we've invited them to our community and get involved. So that when we knock on their door in September to drop off the information on voting early, they will already know us. Not only that, they'll have a positive image of us because we got food for their food pantry, we put jackets on veterans, we did blood. Wait, I gotta make sure I know when the primary is. I gotta make sure I know how I'm voting. And it embeds in their brain. So if somebody says they're supporting your candidate, next question is what? Perfect. On that note, I am going to bring up
Laura Berlin.
Laura Berlin. I'm sorry, Laura, I forgot your name for a second.
That's okay.
So Laura is gonna tell us something very important. What does a governor counselor do?
Yes, Governor's Council. I refer to the Governor's Council as the least well-known elected position in Massachusetts. But at the same time, it's like one of the most important elected positions with respect to criminal justice. So, and that's because the Governor's Council confirms all judges, all parole board members, and every commutation and pardon that's recommended by the governor. So, you know, DAs and sheriffs have gotten a lot more attention recently, but the Governor's Council plays an absolutely critical role. So I got interested in the Governor's Council because I started working in the realm of parole as a volunteer. And I was a member of a group called Parole Watch, and we were trying to hold the parole board accountable. So in that process, we were looking at the types of candidates that the Governor's Council was confirming. And Governor Baker former Governor Baker, was nominating folks to the parole board who had little to no expertise in the types of areas that are really critical for the parole board, like psychology, substance use disorder, social work. He was nominating folks who came through corrections and former prosecutors. And we were really disappointed to see that the Governor's Council confirmed almost all of those people. They voted down one person by one vote. Now, the Governor's Council is made up of 8 council members, and they're from districts, 8 different districts across Massachusetts. And they're all Democrats. So that was a little bit of an eye-opener. Governor Baker also nominated 270 judges for lifetime appointments. And again, 60% were prosecutors. Now, if we're really serious about grappling with the issue of systemic racism in criminal legal reform and the issue of mass incarceration, we need other people to become judges. We need folks who have experience in civil rights and criminal defense. So, you know, this is really our voice on who we want to see on the Governor's Council. As judges and parole board members. Our voice is through our Governor's Counselor. So I have also to say that the Governor's Council, and this has been widely reported, has a very bad reputation. It's a very serious body, but it has a reputation for infighting, for ethical lapses, for really questionable behavior. And one of the things that stood out for me was that one of the Democratic counselors received $34,000 from former Governor Becky. You know, I've been involved in Democratic politics where I come from in Lincoln, and for years, and I never knew anything about the council. And as I said, I only got, you know, interested because of the parole board, the volunteer work I was doing through the parole board. And you know, your current counselor has been there for 32 years. So you know, I don't know if any of you have ever interacted with him. It sounds like there's not a lot of outreach from him, but many of the counselors tend to stay in their positions for a very long time because people don't enter the race, because people don't know what this body does, and people aren't interested. So we're really, really making an effort to try to change this, because I personally have seen how important their role is. I mean, absolutely critical. So I don't want to go on any longer. I want to introduce Stacy. And yeah, because she's an exciting new candidate, and I'm thrilled. So Stacy is born and raised in Boston, and she's the founder and executive director of New Beginnings Reentry Services. As a formerly incarcerated individual herself, Stacy understands firsthand the lack of resources for incarcerated women suffering from past trauma and injustices within prison. The mission of her organization is to reduce recidivism by advocating for and providing services to women re-entering local communities. Stacy holds a master's degree in mental health counseling with a concentration in addictions and trauma. In 2020, Stacy joined the Roundtable on Racial Disparities in Massachusetts Criminal Courts, which was organized by the Harvard Kennedy School's Program in Criminal Justice Policy and Management. Stacy has received numerous awards in recognition of her advocacy for women in the criminal legal system, her community service, and her entrepreneurship. Stacy's an advocate for drama therapy, and she is also an author, performance artist, motivational speaker, and an activist. Her life experience and work makes her uniquely qualified to serve on the Governor's Council. So I hope you'll join me in welcoming Stacy. And I just want to say, this is the primary we're talking about. We're talking about September 3rd. That's the key race where Stacy will be running against Christopher Iannella for your 4th district.
So please take out your cell phones and take a picture of Stacy's speech and make sure you put it on your social media so we can give her more attention. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Laura. And thank you, everybody, for having me. When I walked in the door, John asked me a question. Am I gonna show up? I show up to everything. I have no children, no husband. I am dedicated. I don't know if you heard what Laura said, but I'm a formerly incarcerated woman. That might startle some people. We have a whole bunch of people in prison. And my job is to bring them home. We have an overload. 2 million people are sitting in cages. That is to say that we can do better. And we can't do better if we continue to place people that come from these type of policing and district attorney atmosphere. And so why am I running? I'm running for a whole bunch of reasons. I sat around the round table this past 3 years. The round table through Harvard Kennedy School is really saying Chief Justice Budd, Kimberly Budd, youngest Black woman ever to be our Chief Justice, that looked at the racial disparities in our criminal justice system. And she wanted to change. But she also followed Judge Gantz's report. Judge Gantz was our Chief Justice, and he did a real massive dive on this criminal justice system, the climate in the courtroom. Black and brown people never get a shot. We know how poor our communities, Black and brown communities are, and those are the highest populated in the country in these prisons. And Judge Gantz said, we have to stop it. When the report came out, unfortunately, he passed away. His wife, Deborah Ramirez, who was a professor at Northeastern University, begged the court to continue his work. And when Baker put this woman in place, Kimberly Budd, she said, let's do it, but let's get some formerly incarcerated people to have their experience. So for me, I'm a subject matter expert.
Yeah, you're an experienced woman.
I'm an experienced woman. I lived in these prisons. I suffered from domestic violence and sexual abuse growing up in my community. And so from there, I went into drug addiction, and I didn't know how to stop that cycle. It was the women in prison that raised me. The lifers who said, you can do better, Stace, who pushed me to school, who pushed me in the law library. And I got woken. I always say that I'm like a little egg that hatched. I'm like, what? We're doing what to people? We're just throwing them away and discarding them? Oh yeah, that was me. That was me in court time after time after time. Couldn't one judge? We did have one judge, Judge Coffey, who looked at me and said, what's the matter with you? And I turned around and I'm like, who was he talking to in the courtroom? I've never been humanized in a court. And my brain just started being interactive. Like, maybe you need to talk to him. And manipulatively, I'm saying, no, don't talk to him. He's not going to help you. But something in my gut said, talk to him. And I just told him everything that happened to me in my life, everything that I wanted to do in my life. And miraculously, I said, I want to go back to prison. And my brain is like, you want to go back to jail? What is wrong with you? You're really mentally ill. But no, I knew that I needed the help, and I knew that those women who were loving me and raising me in that prison could do more, and I could possibly give them something too. And that's what I did. I started my journey in the prison, came out of prison, went through Cambridge College, and I knew that I needed to design something different. And I knew that I needed to be at these tables. How are we going to make change if you don't have the people who experience it to make the change? And so that's what I chose to do. I met Laura, I met a team of women out here that are really saying, we mean business. We need to change some stuff. And we cannot continue to do that. I think I read somewhere that there wasn't even a person of color on the Governor's Council since 16 something. Like, that's forever. Like, what? That's forever. That has to change. Secondly, we haven't had any clemency, with the exception of two. I'm really grateful that Governor Baker brought out these two black young men who deserve to be home, but it took the Patriots, Devin Courtney or McCourtney, to advocate for them. Is that how we're gonna keep doing it? We got Kim Kardashian raising, flags about what happens in prison. We have the Patriots. Why can't it be us? Why can't someone hear us? Since 1997, we haven't had any clemency prior because of this Willie Horton thing that keeps haunting us. That's 30 years. 30 more years people have been in prison.
Right.
If we're talking about making change, we have a governor right now who just did 9 pardons in her first administration.
She did.
9 pardons. She also accepted the clemency guidelines that needed to be changed, written by us and really reviewed and written by Professor Patty Gurin at Northeastern, who's a fierce advocate for parole. If you know anything about parole, Patty knows it. And the governor accepted it. So we're on the right track. She just accepted the no-cost call, so prisoners are able to call home and not having to choose between a child to feed at home and a child to call from the prison. That's big. We're doing something big. And so I'm here. I'm going to show up. I said I wasn't going to talk about Ionella, but let me just say this. In Boston, the chambers, city council chambers is named Chris Ionella after his father, who's been in office. When are we going to stop this nepotism? He did office 40 some odd years, and now we have Ionella 32 years. Nobody should sit on any of these lifetime sentences for a judgeship, and they're continuously policing and district attorneys. It shouldn't make you happy either. And I want to say that in the past 5 years, we've worked on 12 wrongful convictions of black men. 12 in 5 years. 2 I worked on myself, and I'm not even a lawyer. This is the problem. If we can sit down and look at someone's history, Raymond Gaines, 47 years wrongfully convicted. Time after time, his appeal was denied because nobody took the time to look at his case. I sat in my backyard for 4 years and unfolded it and brought it into the innocent program. And they saw the injustice. We brought it into Judge Squire Lee. Judge Squire Lee is civil. She comes from civil matters, not a district attorney. She saw it in her eyes and said he was wrongfully convicted and released him after 47 years. But we have a district attorney who says, oh no, you're going back to jail. So for almost 4 years, he's been out on an ankle bracelet, on an ankle monitor with the threat that he's going to go back at 70 years old, even though Squire Lee unfolded just what I found. So these are the injustices we're talking about. The governor's council can sit there and advise the governor that what you're nominating is not the right person. I would like to dive in and read some of the backgrounds on some of these judges. I would like to read some of these clemency applications. People are sitting in prison for decades. If we know the law that just changed for our young people who've been sitting in prison since they were 18, 19, and 20, and they just changed the law for them to start coming up on parole. These are people who've been in prison 50 and 60 years since they were 20. They're coming home. Are we prepared? I'd say no. I'm the only one in Boston that has a reentry program that has the element of trauma. It has the element to target the trauma through the world of arts. We have a whole theater in the basement. We have a whole outpatient program for men to come out and get the counseling and the services that they need and deserve. We feel like we've built a structured program even outside of us. We have many resources that our men and women can go to get the help they need. Since I've been open since 2016, not one person we brought out has harmed anybody. Every woman that we have brought out. I mean, if we look at the history from Suffolk Law, Professor Sareed has done extensive research on women history. Framingham 8 in the 90s came home. We fight for women's rights. We look at disproportionate sentences. We brought Angie Jefferson home after 31 years. She should have had a manslaughter years back. Black woman, coming from a project, coming from a lot of harm herself. Her father was murdered. Her mother checked out mentally, started abusing her, putting her out in the hallway. She grows up at 18 and starts having children by the wrong men. She becomes abused. Her daughter, second child, 3 years old, Shanita, was 3 when her father was murdered. And when I heard this story, I'm like, Angie's telling me this in the prison. She's one of the women who enlightened me. You come from that severe abuse. Your father was murdered. Your daughter's father was murdered. There's something to that. And then you stab somebody and you murder. And you're in here for the rest of your life. Did anybody ever know your story? We need to start talking about these issues. We brought it to then District Attorney Rachel Rollins. She looked at the case. There was some unconstitutional issues from a racist judge who made racist statements that this black girl needs to go to jail for life. Nobody's really looking at the law, the Constitution. It's starting to get too personal. And we're saying we need to start humanizing people. And we need to stop just sending them to prison. But the only way we can do that is put the right judges in to say there's alternatives. We have alternatives to sentencing. Programming works. I even want to tell you that they just took out all the programs in prison. So what are we doing here? Our parole board is a mess. Starting to clean up a little bit. We have 2 people that just got nominated and we fought for them to get those seats. So things are changing. So I'm here, John, I'm gonna show up. Whenever I need to show up, I'm gonna show up. New knees and all, I'm gonna come right here. And I just got my brother and my sister-in-law came and showed up there for Marshfield. So thank you, they always come here. So thank you, I love you.
Thank you, Stacy. So what Stacy forgot to do in the, hey, are you gonna show up question, she said, yes. I said, well, then you have my vote. So
Yes.
these are the types of candidates that we need to get out in front of our audiences, okay? So please make sure you share your content. Here's the basic rule. On November 5th, everyone knows who they're voting for President of the United States. When we get down to Governor's Council, which I believe, unfortunately, Stacy, is going to be on the back, they have no idea who any of those people are. So you, the people in this room, have the most powerful part of this relationship. You need to promote Stacy, and you need to promote our next candidate, because state rep for Marshfield is confusing. Because if you look at the board, quarter of the town is in a different district. So just for everyone online and in the room, basically what we're looking at is precincts 4 and the new precinct 2A is Josh Cutler's district. Okay, so that is basically from the highway all the way down to the high school to right down on Snow Street, which is right outside. If you are represented by Josh Cutler, I am excited to introduce a new candidate who is running to replace him. She is given one speech, but we're not going to count that one. So this is her premiere speech to our town committee, and I want to thank her for doing that. I am serious. You guys need to take out your phones and take pictures and tweet that you were here, throw up on Facebook that you were here. But first for mayor, Becky. So, guys, you're gonna watch the speech. You want to give feedback to Becky and Stacy on what you heard, how they can make it better. As Martine Anderson, one of our veterans, has said, we've never had the governor council come down here, but we have consistently had our state reps come. So this is a good way to start, Becky.
It is a great way to start. Unfortunately, I had a cold about 10 days ago, and I'm a little hoarse, so this isn't my normal voice, and I'll try to project as best I can in this room with this voice. So it's nice to meet you, Stacy.
Nice to meet you.
It brought me back to law school and civil rights clinic, where I went to prison for the first time for a client, And one of the things I saw is exactly what you're talking about. If anybody remembers the Scarsdale Diet case, the woman who murdered her boyfriend was in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility where I was going to visit a different client. And she had taken her background as an educator and started a room for the women in Bedford Hills to meet with their kids that felt more like a kids' room, so that these women could continue to bond with their kids while they were in prison for long periods of time. So it is a lot of times the women in prison who help to nurture and build up the other women in prison. So that was really nice to hear you say. Brought me back years. So here I am running for state rep. Josh announces he's stepping down. I'm dragging my husband everywhere. This is his birthday weekend. I'm really glad that Stacy brought some pastries, because sometimes I try to convince him that this is part of his birthday celebration. So I'm running because I believe that I have the experience it'll take to be ready on day one to serve this district. I have background at the local level on planning board and select boards, at the regional level on Old Colony Planning Council and the Plymouth County Advisory Board and the a steering committee on the Indian Head River. I have experience at the state level, having worked this past year as a staffer in the Joint Committee for Labor and Workforce Development. I think that gives me a background. I also have private attorney experience, business experience, and I went back to get my master's in social work along the way. So I think that that breadth of experience allows me to handle a wide range of issues that come up before the state legislature and that impact directly our district. So let me tell you a little bit about how I got here and who I am. I actually grew up in New Orleans. And I was one of those kids who signed up for every service project you could imagine, whether it was youth ARC and running programs back in the 70s and early 80s. Kids were just coming. The sort of deinstitutionalization movement was starting among people with developmental disabilities. We were working on CYO, we were serving at soup kitchens, we were tutoring Cambodian refugees, you name it, we were trying to do it. And that was sort of how I grew up and what I did. Went to college, worked on the college paper, Committee for Peace with Justice in Central America. Then I went to law school and worked on the Review of Law and Social Change. I was editor of the Review of Law and Social Change and doing a lot of great work. And then I get out of law school and I go to big law in New York City. And I'm working in the corporate world. Yes, I still bring the program I had for working with battered women into our pro bono program, but I'm in the corporate world. And I leave there to go to a satellite communications company and help to build the first private international satellite communications company. And I was part of a team. There were, 185 of us at that point who helped to build this company. And it was exciting. It was going around the world negotiating big deals and getting access to markets in different places and opening up communications. But at some point, I'm telling my executive vice president, I went to law school to save the world. And it turns out I'm making the world safe for MTV. MTV was the most popular out there. And so I realized I really wanted to find a way to build a life that was based on community and family and service. And so I stepped back and I kept working for the company as outside counsel as I tried to figure this out. Met my husband, who grew up in Braintree, and everyone knows that anyone who grows up in the South Shore never leaves.
Yeah.
So this became my home.
The men don't leave, so, yeah.
The men don't leave, the women do. I don't know, a lot of people I know who are women who've been here forever. And so we moved down to Hanson, and that became the start of me building community and service. Got involved with the Cable TV Committee at a time when Comcast was getting out of public access, and we needed to stand up the Webby Hanson Cable Access TV Board. I got elected to the Hanson Select Board. We were looking at Monpont Pond committees. I went back to get my master's in social work from Bridgewater, and then I found that the family piece wasn't coming as easily as I had hoped. And so I stepped back and took a few years. The next year I had my son and took a couple of years with him. And then I opened up my shingle and started to practice law again. And at that point, I was doing some work with a coastal engineering firm down in Louisiana remotely. We did work on looking at the loss of the Delta, the Mississippi Delta. We were looking at post-disaster recovery work in Texas and New York after Hurricane Sandy and other places. And it was really interesting. That company we then sold. I was a part owner. We sold the company and moved on. At the meantime, I became involved in local government again. Volunteered and ran for the planning board in Pembroke. Served on the planning board for Matthew, could probably tell me 5 or 6 years, and chaired that for a couple of years. And then I ran for the select board in Pembroke and served there for 3 years. And got involved with the Old Colony Planning Council through the planning board and the select board. And I currently serve as president of the Old Colony Planning Council. I continued that after I left. And after I left, I went to work at the State House in the Joint Committee for Labor and Workforce Development, where we have basically come to look at all of the labor bills that are in the legislature, come through that committee, and our job is to make sure that every bill gets heard, and we're working with the advocates, and we're working with the people who are opposing it, and trying to find out what can actually get passed. So it gave me an insight into the legislature. One thing I found though, is you get all of these emails when you're a staffer. And these emails tell you about all these great programs, all of this great programming on mental health and coastal issues and all these other issues, but that wasn't my job. And the one thing I love about the job of state rep, and I've worked with Josh for many years, he was my law partner for years, he was my boss at the State House. And one of the things I've loved about the work he gets to do is he gets to connect those dots with the community. He gets to help constituents with state government, but he also got to look at every different area and said, oh, this is the person who needs this email. This is the person who needs to work on that program. Because part of what you're doing is serving constituents, serving all of the communities, and you're trying to get legislation passed, but you're also trying to connect people to the advocacy and the work that they can do at the State House. So when he said that he was going to take this job in the administration, and was I going to run, I looked at it and thought about it for a few minutes and said, you know, I really love this district. I've lived in this district for 20 years. I've lived, worked, raised my son, who's now almost 17, in this district. And Hanson and Pembroke are the two towns I've lived in. But I've spent a lot of time, I spent 10 years at Road to Responsibility on the Human Rights Committee right down the road for part of that time in Mettenham. I spent time in all of these communities, I know them well, and I think I'm ready to serve. The issues that I see that are confronting us right now that are kind of top of my mind are housing. You know, our kids can't afford to live here. Our seniors, I think we have this bottleneck right now because seniors that I talk to frequently don't have the resources or the income to move outside of their home. They don't have another place to move to that's going to be less expensive than where they're living now, and that's going to make sense for them. So they stay where they are, and that means that housing is not available to younger families to move in. We also have the need for workforce housing. You know, when we talk about affordable housing, people don't always realize that affordable around here means that a family of 3 makes somewhere around $90,000 a year. Because in order to afford that affordable housing, you have to come close to the cap in order to actually afford it. That's not nothing. I mean, those are good, those are decent jobs. So we need to work on housing. We need to work on housing in a way that doesn't change the character of our communities. We need to try to generate more ideas at the local level and filter them up and not just have them come down to us. Second issue is economic development. And it ties into housing because it's very difficult to have economic development if your workforce can't afford to live there. Road to Responsibility has something like 40% of its jobs open. People with developmental disabilities aren't in enough programs right now as people age out of programs. So when we talk about economic development, we need to also talk about workforce, we need to talk about jobs, we need to talk about paying living wages. Because that's the key to being able to have economic development, is to have a skilled workforce in the areas you need it. Our tradespeople are aging out. We need more apprenticeship, vocational ed, workforce development. That's actually what Josh is going to work on in the labor department. So these all kind of pull together. At Old Colony Planning Council, we were able to get a grant from the Economic Development Agency at the federal level, a grant from the state, and some money from the South Shore Chamber of all places to conduct a water study that looks at the whole region and says, if we're gonna put any more housing or development down here, where's our water coming from? How are we sharing water resources in a way that doesn't impact the environment negatively? Which brings me to my third issue, which is coastal resiliency and environmental issues that come with global warming. We have these tremendous resources. We're a district that has beaches and coastline that is flooding. We have inland ponds, we have rivers, we have Burridge Pond over in Hanson that people almost never know about, that's under wildlife management. We live on a pond in Pembroke that has probably 5 recreational ponds and trails that are tremendous. So the question is, what do we do in the face of global warming, weather patterns that are getting more extreme, to protect our communities and protect that open space at the same time we're doing economic development and housing. A lot of pieces. I'm not running to sort of be the be all and end all to fix all of this. Like with the satellite company, I want to be part of a team. I want to be your advocate on that team to say, this is our district, this is what we care about. I want to listen more and bring that back to the State House and be there to represent you. My son a few years back said that growing up in Pembroke was like growing up on a campground. He had all these trails he could go down. There was the pond, there was the basketball courts, and he was pretty free to just roam, you know, and he loved it. And I want that to be true for our grandkids, for my grandkids. And I'm hoping we can do that by making stronger communities. And when we think this week about something like mental health, and the Elmo story that everyone probably heard, building strong communities, building safe spaces, keeping places for kids to play and roam, that's part of building stronger youth, stronger communities. And that's at the core of addressing these kind of issues. So I'm hoping that I get to know all of you that I don't know already. Maybe I can get Kathy over there to go back out with me and learn some more rowing skills. And we can do a lot of fun things and a lot of good for our district. So I hope that you will support me. Check me out at BeckyColetta.com. I'm on Facebook, Becky Coletta for State Rep, and could use your support in every way possible. So thank you.
So, you are all part of a fire code violation. You have been in the room, which is amazing. Thank you all for coming out. What we're going to do is the library's asked us to move to the bigger room. So I'm going to ask Becky and Stacy to head over there right now, and we will all greet them over there. Before everyone leaves, very important, these are 2 great candidates. Nobody knows who they are. It's up to us to talk to our friends and our family members about supporting them. This video will be online, and it will be streaming. So before you leave, Stacy and Becky, scoot outside and then go to the next room, and we're going to meet you all over there.
Right next door.
Right next door. Just so that, remember, very important, librarians are awesome, and they're on the front line. So please support your local library. Before you leave, you need to see Becky and Stacy's assistant. They have sign-up sheets. So if you like our candidates, please make sure you hit up their assistants. Michelle, can we have your daughter come up? So we're going to give free advertisement to the person who provided free food for us today. Introduce yourself.
I'm Paisley. I just started a small business that I'm running called Paisley's Bakery. I do lots of different sort of pastries, baked goods, anything really. So I love baking and I can't eat it all. So I want to share it with anybody who would love it. And, I had some business cards. I'm still working on getting actual cards. So you can see my social media and email me and let me know if you just want something, if you have something you want to share with others. I love baking and I want to share it with people.
What's your website? What's your email?
My email is paisleybakes@gmail.com. I'm mostly on social media, so I have Paisley's_bakery for Instagram. The same name for Facebook, Paisley's Bakery. But all the information is on that card as well, so hopefully I got those names right because I did just create them last week and it's limited as far as what you can choose on social media now. But I hope that you can try some of the stuff I have and share it.
Thank you. So please, so if you have any occasion, please email her. Chris has got it up on the screen. So we're gonna go meet the candidates next door. This is very important. Make sure you talk to them, make sure you say hello, make sure you sign up to support them. We'll see you next door. Please, everyone, file out. If you are online, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to be cutting this up so that you can share the individual candidates' speeches. Please do that. Like, comment, share. That's how we grow the network. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate the large crowd we've had today. And thank you for being part of our fire code violation. Have a great day. Come next door, guys. Let's go meet the candidates.